Well, I was a young boy that had big plans. Now I'm just another shitty old man. Well, I don't have fun and I hate everything. Now, well, time is over you. Glory days don't mean shit to me. I drink a six-pack of alcohol. Life's a bitch and so am I. The world time is over you. Wasting youth and a fence full of ideals. I heard a young and optimistic point of view. Wasting youth and a fence full of ideals. I heard a young and optimistic point of view. I decompose and my guts getting fat. Oh my god, I'm turning out like my dad. I'm always sure I got a bad attitude. The world of me, so fuck you. The lights are nag and they can't fuck it up. I don't have sex cause I can't get it up. I'm just a Russian on the couch. The world of me, so fuck you. See you in a fist full of ideals. I had a young and optimistic point of view. We see you in a fist full of ideals. I had a young and optimistic point of view. Well, I was a young boy that had big plans. Now I'm just another shitty old man. I don't have fun and I hate everything. The world of me, so fuck you. The little days don't mean shit to me. I drank a six-pack of empathy. Life's a bitch and so am I. The world of me, so fuck you. The world of me, so fuck you. The world of me, so fuck you.
And I'm live tonight with Lamprey Milt. He's been on the show a couple times already. More than actually a couple times. Probably the most appeared guest on the show. So I do appreciate having him on tonight. And I'm going to get started with an article he wrote for the American Sun, which is called Density and Intensity. Do you want to take it away, Lamprey, and talk about your most recent article?
Here we go.
Interest.
We're live, by the way, Lamprey, so you can, I just introduced you, so you can just get started with the article if you'd like. Your most recent one on American Sun.
Wagey, getting cagey. All day long you sweating ragey. Need is comfy, need is cool. Need is free from work and school. Wagey trapped and wagey dies. NEET eat tendies, sauce and fries. What's going on first? How are you?
Nothing much. I wanted to bring you on because we had a previous conversation earlier in the month about kind of what's going on. We're kind of U.S.-centric, of course, but it seems that the crisis that we're in, it's transforming nationally, what we're seeing right now, and how, you know, our labor markets, I believe, and the supply chain issues we're seeing now stateside are a result of the issues we discuss on this channel. And you also had a very interesting article called Density Intensity on American Sun. So I wanted, if you could get started with that to start off the show, since that's your newest piece of work.
Sure. It was on the Revolver news aggregate, so it got a lot of eyes on it, and it was to my surprise. I wasn't expecting it to pop up in Revolver. It was kind of a part two to something I had written last year about what had been going on in China and their real estate market. You can see what's happening now. A year later, after I've written that article, you have the whole Evergreen debacle where these property developers are insolvent. Unfortunately, I invested a good amount of money in Chinese real estate because I was under the notion that they would start pulling more people out from the countryside and shoving them in these bugman style apartments. And I know that a lot of them are in debt, heavily in debt, and usually the Chinese Communist Party acts those developments. There's a lot of nepotism, people that work in and out of the party, but obviously they decided to, I guess, throw Evergreen underneath the bus as kind of a sacrificial lamb, so to speak. But it's interesting because when I had written that article last year, I didn't think that this was going to happen in China. So it was a build upon what's been going on in China and where the whole world is moving, which is not so much that we're seeing this diaspora out of the cities, but this diaspora out of the cities is somewhat of a lull. We're in a bit of a lull phase, and eventually they're going to start pulling people back into the cities long term, which coincides with the Great Reset.
So your conclusion is that what we're facing now is you're going to actually see like a herd behavior out of the cities, like a kind of like with the 1950s, we had a white flight in America. We haven't had anything really since then. Maybe a move into the cities, but yeah, COVID did have a lot of people moving into the suburbs and even rural areas that were formerly residing in cities. What's interesting about the China thing is that no one mentions, like, when you see all the reasons for the collapse there right now in that company, was it Everglade?
Evergreen.
Evergreen, yeah. So what they talk about the property market there is they don't mention first you have a extreme demographic imbalance because of the one-child policy with too many men being born, and how competitive the market is to find a wife or a girlfriend there. And one of the prerequisites to do that, to even enter the dating market, since it's much more regulated there than something like the West, where it's kind of like, you know, free for all, is you have to have property as a young man. You have to own something. And that kind of drove the housing bubble to where we see now with China. In China, like to take a down payment, you need multiple generations buying in, 3 generations. If people think the West has a real like issue with housing prices, there it's much worse. Like I think Hong Kong, or you know, cities like Beijing, Hong Kong, and Shenzhen,
Shanghai.
Yeah, they're like, I think Shanghai's might be the worst. It's like 54 times the median income. I'm not sure on the concrete figures, but it's probably the worst in the world in how much you need to save for a down payment and how relative the prices are compared to the average salary. And I think that's really driven by the huge bachelor crisis or their incel crisis in China that the government actually has addressed, and they're doing a lot of stuff to kind of to mitigate it. So yeah, that's another thing that's not ever talked about, is because men are lonelier and single than ever, they do things to kind of get a leg up on the dating market in their perspective, which is like buying property in China. And I think that's driving a lot of it. You know, it's the families, you know, they want to see their sons, you know, procreate, and, you know, they also fund this. So then you get all these ghost cities and these ghost towers. And also, there's also in China, you can't really invest into much of anything. They don't have like a long-term stable stock market to buy into like we have. There's not a lot of options, but I do think the bachelor crisis they have is really not mentioned enough. It's not mentioned at all from all reporting I've been seeing. What do you think of that?
Well, they just lifted the one-child policy, and I want to correct myself. It's Evergrande, not Evergreen. So I had to go back and just Google that. I'm like, is it Evergreen or Ever something? So it's Evergrande. You are 100% correct regarding the plight of bachelors in China. They have an excess male population due to the one-child policy. Most Chinese families prefer having men, and that's globally. That's something that we seem to have forgotten as a society in the West, that, you know, women were kind of looked at second. You know, there's the dowry. I know in Catholicism, you know, at least for me growing up, the bride's father would help the groom either get them a job or buy them properties, like sort of, paraphrasing, so to speak. It's like, okay, you please marry my daughter. I'll give you a down payment, buy you a house, or get you a good job. This way you can take my daughter off my hands, because I don't want to have her being a leech on me into my into my twilight, right? And going back to what you're saying about the real estate market in China, in Hong Kong, home prices are about 15 times higher than household incomes in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong has always been the most expensive place for real estate, especially in Asia. In the United States, it's now San Francisco and New York City, even though there's been a bit of a drop in prices, but not nearly as much as one was anticipating during the whole COVID crisis in 2020. What do you do with an excess population of males, right? So that's the question many of us are having. And for those that are not privy to history, usually you would send them off to war. Okay, and then in China's case, what they've been doing is sending a lot of them to places like Africa and Pakistan. And, you could live somewhat of a quasi-adventurous life, building roads in Zaire or Nambia or Angola or something to that effect. In the past, 500-600 years ago, you look at Spain, they had the conquistadors. They would send their excess population to go conquer South America, find a woman, fight off some warriors or whatever, some Aztec warriors or Mayan fighters or whatever, So that's kind of where we're at. Now in the United States, the excess male population's been regulated to hot pockets and pornos.
Yeah, for sure. Also, the thing they can do with the excess population, which as soon as this channel came about, I've always said that this Taiwan thing would eventually, see like a kind of a violent conclusion, possibly. But it seems like there's a lot of saber rattling with Taiwan, but that's a whole other topic, It seems like under the pressure of an excess male society, China has not only established a very vicious credit score system, also surveillance state. This was helped built by the West too. All this stuff, like the majority factor to me, in my opinion, it seems to be just excess men without women for the most part, and that's the thing that's not mentioned at all in all the coverings of it. And they're wondering right now in the news, finally Taiwan and the threat to it is finally being kind of publicized, even though it's been a long time in the making. 20-year project basically. But yeah, I agree with you. In the West, it's much more irregular. In China and Japan, they're actually addressing these issues of just incel men. China's doing basically, they're going to court all the singles into like an area, have a social gathering, kind of monitored by the government. We'll see. I mean, China already has a much more stringent matchmaking system. It's much more regulated. Basically, your grandparents or sometimes even your parents, they go to like a square, like you have a bunch of apartment buildings in China that are cookie cutter, and they all have squares, and everybody, your extended family, goes there and exchanges pictures and bios with one another to pair up, But there's always a problem of 2-to-1, 3-to-1, males to females. So there's
in the early 2000s, China converted over to a consumer-based society, which caused an explosion in consumerism. And one of the easy vehicles to garnish, a passive income was to invest in real estate. It's a way to protect yourself from inflation. You can rent out your properties, et cetera, et cetera. They also don't have property tax. So a lot of those ghost cities you see, those units, those concrete slabs that you see are bought out. But since there's no property tax, they would let it sit for an extended period and slowly but surely start putting a sink in, put the tile floor in, install, start, partitioning walls, et cetera, what have you. And it's also a way of keeping the books heated. So cooking the books in accounting. So you can show that this project is under development with just having a skeleton crew on site doing the development work. We'll lay a brick one day, next day we'll bring in a crane, and they just slowly churn the wheel, so to speak, where there's not as much of a demand trying to get these projects done to offload the books. So that's why you see such a plethora of these ghost cities that have gone up. Also, the Chinese don't trust their currency. So naturally, the upper middle class and those connected to the Communist Party are always looking to move their money abroad. And we've definitely enabled that in the West, allowing Chinese capital to fill the coffers of the West, more tax money, visa programs, job creation. You have the EB-5 visa, which I had written about last year in that article. You guys can click at the top. There's a link to the first article that I give a real good in-depth analysis on why China is the way it is regarding real estate, why there's ghost cities, et cetera, et cetera. But that was after '08. When the crash in '08 had happened in the United States, that's when we really opened up the floodgates to foreign capital. It doesn't necessarily have to be China. It's also South America. You could look at Miami as a good example, where you have a lot of black money from places like Colombia, Mexico, Venezuela, Brazil, that have, because it's obviously Miami's close to South America. Miami's beautiful. So it's a very cosmopolitan, cheap place for those of the cosmopolitan elite to invest in. So you buy a unit, you rent it out to some locals, and obviously just go from there. And now what we're seeing is this mass migration in the United States, where so many people don't want to stay in these blue highs because of various things, COVID, the vaccination requirements, and just the general direction a lot of these mega city centers are going in. You're having a lot of the middle class pour out of those locations, and more importantly, you're seeing white flight 2.0, so to speak. So a lot of people are working now remote. If you go back to '08, there wasn't not nearly as good of broadband services. You didn't have cloud servers. You didn't nearly have as many remote jobs. So a lot of these people that have these cushy office jobs aren't necessarily all that thrilled about going back to the office, right? And so many people are like, what? I want this COVID thing to keep going. I don't really want to go back to my office job. I don't really want to go back to spending $300 on a train ticket. I don't really want to keep spending money buying lunch at the deli around the corner. That's $10, $15. So a lot of people are kind of happy with the lockdowns because they just simply don't want to go back to work. And that's also part of the reason why you're seeing the consumption skyrocket. People are now home. They're ordering from Amazon. They're having fatter disposable incomes to buy more goods off the internet. So that's just kind of a bird's eye view on where we're at with things, and we can obviously get more into it as we go along.
Yeah. So going back to what you said about New York City, for example, the best source on the ground in New York City is this repair shop guy called Louis Rossman, because he actually goes and films every neighborhood, and he films, what stores are vacant, what stores are not. And in 2020, he had a video explaining very well in a less than 10-minute video how the market works. Is that the reason why since 2008 recession there's still tons of vacant commercial real estate in New York City, and the reason why is because the foreigners that buy into that and own the rights to it, the brick and mortar, they're so rich that they don't even care about having a tenant. Having a tenant to them is actually more stressful. It's more of a question mark, and they don't know American culture or anything. So to them, they just want it as a savings account. Like you talked about South America, Saudi Arabia, parts of the former Soviet Union. China's a big one too, especially on the West Coast. And that's what's going on right now. What he reported on is that right now there's people rushing back into New York City because the rental right now there's between 10 and 30% people bidding over asking price on rentals. This is not a mortgage or a condo or anything. It's rental. That's what's going on now in his newest video. So that's a strange thing, because in 2020, New York City was emptying out. Now there's not enough rentals to go around as demand skyrockets back. So it's very. What do you make of that?
Well, it's a vehicle to it's a safeguard inflation is real estate. So like if you go back to Weimar Germany when their currency collapsed, poor people would rush out and buy grand pianos, living in a bugman apartment. So you'd open the door to like a 500 square foot apartment with 6 people living in it, and then there's a grand piano in the living room. Like what the hell is this? Well, the plan is that they're just going to flip it months later. And they're doing now. You're seeing that being done with a lot of different things, and obviously the easiest return on investment, if you can liquidate it fast enough, is real estate. I mean, take me for example. I mean, I finally bought myself a small little dwelling, and it's already up 20% in the past 4 or 5 months. So if I wanted to, I can sell this for a profit, obviously minus capital gains and depending what I put in for renovation. But a lot of people are doing that. So now you with this excess population migrating to relatively inexpensive neighborhoods where they're more liberal in property rights, pro property right states, places like Tennessee, Kentucky, even Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia. People are bought these low for under $100,000, and now they can sell them for 100% profit. So and people coming out of places like New York and California, they sell their properties for in excess of $500,000, 700, 800,000, depending on where you live, maybe even $1 million. A little bit harder to liquidate properties are above 600,000, but you take that money and you go live in a place like West Virginia, well, you're living like a king or a queen, right? So you're driving up property values in places that didn't really have any value to begin with.
Right. So, but what's going on in New York City right now, according to Louis Rossman, and the pricing data? It's not buying; these are renting. People want to rent so much in New York City that they're writing love letters to landlords. This is not a buying thing and hold. That's the thing. That's what's so interesting, is that there's a shortage of rentals. Apparently, there's too much demand for rentals. This is not a
are you talking commercial rentals or residential rentals?
Like renting an apartment, not buying, not anything.
All right. So
the lease base.
The problem now with the rental apartments in New York City is that, let's say if I'm a landlord, okay, and now I got more than 10% vacancy rate, okay, and you want to get those people into those empty vacant apartments. Okay, the problem is you can't lower the rent. Why? Because the person that's already renting the building sees that you're renting the unit next door, same size, same amenities, same everything, what have you. He's going to want to jump into that rental. Okay, so you're not seeing that much gyration or volatility in the rental market as one would expect during an economic downturn, because the landlord has to maintain the building. He's got to pay his property tax. He has a mortgage on the property itself and the land. So a lot of these landlords are now looking for greener pastures. So what are they doing? They're looking at places like Utah. They're looking at places like Tennessee. They're looking at places like Arkansas, Texas, where there's, the populations are skyrocketing. I know California's lost, I think they lost the Senate seat, and so did New York. First time in both states' history that they're actually losing political power because of how many people are actually living. You're also seeing the gap in the classes. So the middle class is getting shrunk since they're pouring out. That's your tax base. And now you're having, what is it? I think it's plutonomy, where you have a monster this elite with money, like more than God can ever imagine, subsidizing the poor, so to speak. So they're able to retain power, and they don't really care about the middle class or even the upper middle class landlords or people that have small businesses. So it's just a monster consolidation. On the commercial side, you're having things like dark store theory. The United States allocated millions of acres of land to retail shopping, over 6 times as much per capita as other Western countries like in Europe. And in America, we greatly resisted the natural market to correct the distortion in this plethora of commercial real estate. This obviously led to an uneven landscape across the United States. So that's why you see so many strip malls that now sit vacant. You know, you have your anchor store, which would be like a Macy's or a Sears or a supermarket. That's now vacant. Well, once you lose that anchor store, all the little stores around it, you know, the nail salon, the shoe cobbler, the Chinese fast food takeout joint, the pizzeria, those start to go under because you lost that one anchor where everyone would go and shop there first, and then obviously get their nails done, haircut, get something to eat, etc., etc. So before the scamdemic, many big box stores were already pressed because of overhead and property tax, since commercial property taxes are higher than residential. Coupled with the rise of online, obviously coupled with the rise of online retail. So this gave rise to the dark store theory, which is a tax strategy used by big box store retails to lower their property tax value by manipulating appraisals through something called lease fees instead of fee simple. And this is obviously real estate jargon. I don't expect anyone to really understand that. Basically, for you guys to understand what I mean by all this is that retailers like Walmart contend that they're fully operational, often thriving businesses should be assessed the same as vacant buildings. Thus, to offset the lost tax revenue by the region affected, gets dumped on small businesses and detached housing. So your anchor store, right, doesn't want to pay property tax because there's no revenue coming in. So what does the city or local village town do? Oh, well, give it to the single family home. So increase their taxes, right? So that's kind of a bit of an understanding what has happened as far as the commercial real estate sector goes. And while it's still kind of early in the Great Reset, in my personal opinion, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that these empty office buildings will be used to house the masses and future mystery meat residents who await being dispersed at the border and airport terminals. And with things like Proposition 47 being floated across most democratic cities, we will see the continuation of brick and mortar businesses being destroyed and repurposed. Oh yeah, sure. I wouldn't doubt that a lot of people are trying to buy back into the cities because hell, the population's still increasing. You have more singles. More singles means more demand on housing, right? And you gotta also finesse this with the baboon logic is, well, if I have more land, if I have more property, if I have more square footage, I look more attractive to a spouse, or it doesn't have to be a spouse. It look more attractive to the opposite sex. So women like more property because they can have more dogs, or perhaps be single moms, or incubator babies, freeze dry their eggs. And guys will look more attractive because, well, it's kind of a tournament theory where I'm a Chad because I have a 2,000 square foot apartment overlooking the ocean. So
yeah, the whole situation.
I hope I didn't speak too fast there, but
yeah. The whole situation, we'll circle around back to real estate and then insanity going on there. What do you take of the kind of the NEET and the labor market situation there? Do you not see in your area like the for hiring signs everywhere? The New York Times just had an article about where are the workers? That's literally the title, and they're even the mainstream news is kind of asking, what's going on. And someone on our server, the Mammoth Network, looked up data from the Federal Reserve that shows 2% of the male labor force, which is actually a lot. That's over 80 million people, I think, or almost close to 90. 2% of that has dropped out since the start of the pandemic, and we haven't recovered. As we saw with the most recent job report, it was very disappointing for the Central Authority to see that even the benefits have been cut off and everything. There's still not a recovery of people flooding in the labor market like conventional wisdom would tell you. So what do you take of this situation?
It's really hard to gauge because I've honestly been questioning this for a couple of weeks now with one of my buddies who comes on my live streams, and we've been trying to figure out and kind of chop down some of this. I don't want to get lost in the weeds, so to speak. It's really hard to gauge. I honestly do not know what is causing this. One of it is consumption is way up. I do know that, and that goes back to what I was saying, that people are sitting home and ordering more things online. But that's just garbage from China, right? And also, again, let's go back to inflation. If inflation's rising, what are some of the things people are going to do to safeguard themselves from inflation? Well, you're going to get your kitchen remodeled. You're going to go out and buy that appliance. You're going to go ahead and fix your car. You're going to go ahead and buy pretty much anything, because you don't know whether in 3 months, 6 months, a year to 2 years from now, how much more those things are going to be, right? Now, as far as the job market goes, first and foremost, the people that are looking to hire aren't paying. So if there's a help wanted sign, you go in and they're offering you $10 an hour, is anyone really going to take that job? Well, you're probably just going to keep on looking for something better that may pay $1, $2, $3, maybe even $10 more. So you're seeing a lot of like construction workers looking to hire plumbers, electricians, a lot of tradesmen looking to hire, but at the end of the day, what are you paying? Are you offering medical? Are you offering a 401k or even a pension? What is it? What's the incentive for me to go and work for you? Right? The other thing is, and this is more in the service-based economy, if you're working in a restaurant, one, do you want to wear a mask? Are there vaccination mandates being implemented? Okay. And are you at risk of losing your job because of another lockdown? So if I go and become a server at a local diner, well, who's to say in 3 or 4 months that there's another COVID shutdown? So you're seeing a lot of people being apprehensive about jumping into these positions that were not there a year ago because of a COVID mandate by local authorities.
I'm not sure if it's like anything to do with so much to do as a COVID as the general demoralization and kind of a lot of people giving up on life itself, especially from the young male perspective. I mean, in these spheres that I run in, it seems that 90% of guys are just completely unemployed, and they're either doing something online to generate whatever income they can, or they're just supported by their parents, or they're doing something, maybe even black market, or doing something off the internet. I don't think it's customary for a woman, the modern woman in America, to drop out of the labor market ever. There's a lot.
Well, they get OnlyFans now.
Yeah, in that way, but even these OnlyFans chicks, when I looked into the news stories, they would be like working as mechanics for some of them. There's a Honda mechanic one that was like a high-low mechanic. Like there's still like the NEET. When you talk about NEET and dropping out, that's specifically a male, specifically like a Zoomer or millennial male kind of phenomenon. That's kind of when you think of that word, you think of kind of a male. Like in Japan, it's hikikomori. It's the grass eater men. It's that type of stuff. It seems like it's kind of global. And earlier, I think Washington Post or someone had basically, I think during COVID, we've lost 1.8 million young men in the college systems. They've decided not to go or drop out. And when you look like the split between entrance into four-year institutions, it's like 60-40. But that doesn't tell you the whole picture. When you come out of those institutions with a four-year degree, it's actually 70% women earning the degrees. And because a lot of men, what they do is they go to college their first semester, first year, and they drop out after kind of having no direction and kind of getting even more depressed at the sight of things. What do you take about the general demoralization of the American worker, specifically focusing on the young male?
Oh man, that's a deep question. Well, let's go back to when I was 19, 20, going to college, working retail, smoking a ton of weed. I picked up a trade. When I went to go try to work that trade, I was fired, I think, 3 times because I didn't know enough, and it becomes somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, I don't know anything because I don't have a job. I don't have a job because I don't know anything. And baby boomer didn't want to teach you anything, right? So that's where baby boomer is more of your friend and not a mentor. Okay, so I remember one job, and I'm taking a drag of my cigarette. I remember, yeah, I went back to my old job, asking for if I could come back, and the business was sold to someone else that I had not been working for, and he informed me that they just hire people from Guatemala during the season and then cut them loose at the end of the season, and they return back to Guatemala. Right? So instead of hiring someone local, you basically pay for their visas, right? Get their passport stamped. They come here on a temporary work visa. They work the season and then they go back. And then for that job in particular, you kind of just run a bit of a skeleton crew until the next season turns around, right? So they come in for 3-4 months, start everything up, good to go, cut them loose, rinse and repeat. Same thing with landscapers. There's obviously problems with the visa regulations for a lot of temp workers from South America, and a lot of landscapers have gone belly up because they can't get workers because they've been so heavily dependent on foreign workers and these temporary work visas. It's unfortunate to say, but capitalism doesn't invest in the future. They invest in the future based on making money, not investing so much on their labor force. So companies like GE, Boeing, these multinationals, that's why they've gone global, is because we don't really want to invest in our native population and showing them how to do things. We can just go to the Philippines where a lot of these people already know how to do these jobs. Whether they do a good job or not, it's irrelevant. And we can get into that later on in the show. But that's what a lot of these multinationals do. It's pump and dump. You burn them up and then to hell with them when they hit 55 because he's useless and he wants to retire, and they don't really care about knowledge nearly as much because they figured, okay, well, even though the 55 knows the ins and outs of this business, well, he's older now, he's going to want more time off, he's kind of phoning it in, so to speak. We'll just plug in an intern, burn them up, and then dump them after 2 or 3 years and say, this is good job experience for you, and they just get thrown back into the rotation on like Indeed and ZipRecruiter.
There's actually a good video out. It says it's called like "Young People Are Screwed" by a guy who he basically collects these Magic the Gathering cards, and he basically compares what it was like. He's a millennial that graduated around the 2008 recession, so he worked while he was in college between, I'd say, 2004 to 2008. He worked like in the restaurant business, and he said that, looking at the salaries of a restaurant manager compared to now, it's basically the same. It's between 50 and 75, whatever. And that's what it is now. It hasn't changed. But
well, the waiter makes as much as the manager now. So why would I take on all this responsibility if I'm going to get paid the same amount as the server? And I know a lot of people with that mentality that work in restaurants. I ask them, why don't you become the manager of the restaurant? He goes, well, I make more being a server, so why would I want the management position with all these responsibilities? Same thing with working in retail. If I'm going to be a produce clerk and get paid the same amount of money as pushing shopping carts, well, I'd rather just push shopping carts in the parking lot where I don't have to deal with people. I can pop in my favorite podcast and push carts all day versus having to deal with people complaining about, oranges or rotten fruit or something to that effect. So there's a leveling effect going on. Is that despite all these responsibilities you're taking on, the jobs with less responsibility are paying the same wage. So it's a false dichotomy when you argue capitalism or communism, because they all wind up being somewhat the same thing. Perfect competition. There's no difference between Target and Walmart anymore. There's no difference between Cadillac and Lincoln anymore. There used to be very glaring and obvious differences between different merchandise and consumerist goods. There's really not anymore. I mean, my Android phone is not too much different from an iPhone. I mean, there are, but you get the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, it's just that where a year ago we were concerned about, COVID was in the news. Much more now is the case is about the supply chain issues. Like right here in California, it'd be the Long Beach transit yard. Has to run 24/7 now, which isn't. I have a friend working actually down there, which doesn't really solve much of anything because you only have so many crane operators. It takes like 3 years for a guy to get dexterous enough to kind of be very optimal at that job anyways. So
that takes years.
yeah.
Get a crane operator's license. I know in New York, forget it, man. You need like 10 years underneath your belt.
Exactly.
Get a lot of responsibility.
But
A lot of
what we're seeing
responsibility.
is
Man.
we're also seeing in the UK, for example, they lack complete truck drivers. Like they lack like hundreds of thousands of them, and that's because of the conditions are bad. But also that's a male-dominated field, and that used to be done like by Eastern European immigrants. That kind of went back during the COVID. But still, all these things, it seems, is that as it stands now for young men, especially, is that the system requires you to give it your all your hours to be allocated to the GDP, and if that's not happening, there's going to be a lot of problems that arise. You're not going to have enough drivers delivering gas, petrol to the UK stations, as we saw. You're not going to have enough dock workers, unloading these cranes. There's just going to be you're not going to have enough low wage labor at all these places hiring with their hiring signs. And this is a mainstream kind of effect now. And there's also bare shelves. There's the president's approval rating has gone to the dumps. As primarily as a result of this, gas is up 48% over a year. There's all these cascading effects, but I think it all goes back to disengaged men. I think that's kind of what we're missing in the labor market. That's what a lot of people have observed, is that there's alternative arrangements now for young men that don't really have a stake in society because of their predicament in life to take. Whether it's like some guys are doing like Uber Eats 1 or 2 times a week and just living with their family. There's just not there's not this like societal push to address the problems of all these young male labor, students and laborers being out of the economy now. I think COVID was really a turning point. It's kind of the proverbial camel that was its back slammed by the last straw, which was this whole COVID epidemic. I think people having time off, and I knew a lot of people are making a lot more unemployment in some cases than they were would work in their jobs, and they kind of looked at that, and that really made them question reality and what their life mattered, and where were they really going. It gave people that mental break they needed to be really.
It did for me.
Yeah,
I mean,
it did.
I relocated, and I'm grateful I did. And you don't know which way the winds are blowing, and you have to make heads or tails of this. Going back to why men are dropping out of the labor force, obviously not getting laid is a large factor in this, because you're not attractive to the opposite sex because she's making 6 figures doing marketing for I don't know, for Facebook or some shit, right? And the other thing is that no one's discussing is just the amount of debt. You're priced out of the market. Right? So I'm not going to work for you if I can't afford rent. If the rent's $2,000 for a 500 square foot apartment in, some exo city outside of a mega city, what's the benefit in that? I might as well be a happy, humble hermit and go live in a place like in the Ozarks or something to that effect, So, look, in order to sustain yourself today, you need to go into debt on on one level or another. And a lot of people that are my age and your age view debt through a very skeptical lens, and rightfully so. Boomers don't view debt in the same lens as people under the age of 40. We view it as a monster burden. Boomers do not view debt as a burden. So what did a lot of baby boomers do back in March and April of 2020? Well, they took on more debt. They got SBA loans, they got PPP loans if they're a small business, and that was able to fuel themselves even further. So if you're getting an SBA loan for that's 2 or 3%, it's basically free money, right? If you are offered a business credit line with like 0 APR for 1 year, and the interest rates are so low on that, well, to hell with it. I might as well just keep on borrowing. Whereas poor people and NEETs and guys that are somewhat disposable, they don't have that luxury of going into debt because they're leveraging themselves too much, and they don't necessarily have as much of a safety net. So obviously debt is not a safety net, but for the boomer, since he has equity in his home, his car's paid off, or his house is paid off, and he's bought all of his goods 10, 15, 20 years ago, they have the ability to do these things. And again, versus young people, they obviously do not. Men regulated to the NEET lifestyle, well, they'll just live in their parents' basement. They'll do Uber Eats, deliver pizzas. And then the problem is, well, once you get a little bit older, you're in your 30s, you have no skill set. Your communication skills are entropic. You don't know how to communicate with the others, so you can't even get really a sales job because you don't really know how to communicate with people, especially this day and age with this this monster imbalance where everyone's in their own little bubble, their own little culture, so to speak, because of the militant individualism, which we can definitely get into that maybe later on. You don't have I don't want to say you don't have a future. I don't want to black pill a lot of young guys, but at the same effect, you're not going to get anywhere if you're not leaving your home. You have to get out. You have to engage with the world because the world is not going to engage with you. And when it starts engaging with you, you have other bigger problems at hand. So, anyway. I don't really know. So I don't really know exactly what's causing the underlying issues. What is causing the labor shortage? I mean, what really has changed in the past 2 years besides consumption going up and this mass migration of people? The mass migration could be seen as a good thing, where if you're in an area that's just seen an influx of 10,000 people and it's a 40,000. And the demographics are only like 40,000. Well, there's going to be tons of jobs opening up because they're going to need people to basically supply and the demand side of things with this new influx of individuals, migrants, pseudo migrants. There are opportunities out there. It's just you got to really plug away and look at it.
You kind of did like internal geomax, like Hell Bilateral Light is doing. That's what he kind of recommends for people to do, or he's kind of doing. Did you see any difference between moving from New York City to kind of a more area that you desire?
It sucks. I miss New York. I'm not gonna lie. I totally miss. Yeah, I miss people from New York. I miss the mystery meat fucking lunatics from all walks of life. I really truly miss all that. I do. The problem is now I live in like a super white location, but the problem is that every white person is from another part of the United States, and that causes a serious imbalance communicating with the other. So, this person's from Michigan. I really don't know how to interact with someone from Michigan. I don't really know how to interact with someone from Georgia. I don't really know how to interact with someone from Washington, California. So every time I meet someone, I'm getting thrown this totally different style and type of person, and they don't necessarily understand me. Versus in New York, I mean, granted, it's people from all over the place. There's kind of like an underlying culture. It's like, even though you're from Egypt or whatever, you understand New York. You see what I'm saying? So I'm able to get along and interact and do business with someone from Egypt versus a white dude from Missouri, where, they're kind of a little bit more narcissistic or whatever. I definitely noticed. I understand what white people are now, air quote. I'm paraphrasing white people. I understand now what that terminology really truly means. A white person to me is someone who identifies with their granite countertop versus their church, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, how have you noticed the dating market change between your area and where you were in New York?
Dating market is better. Women are definitely more materialistic, but the women are not nearly as attractive. If
What have been your experiences?
Uh, kind of just sloppy, So I'm still on the East Coast, but I moved south. Like I said, they're less materialistic. I'm getting two types. I'm getting a hardcore Bible thumper, where like their Tinder profile or match profile is God this, Jesus that, God, 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 or I'm getting LGBT tranny, pro BLM. Like there's no middle ground. It's either you have to be thumping the Bible, or you got to be down with wokeism.
Yeah, it's very polarized, and you're
Super polarized. Yeah.
You're using dating apps, correct?
I actually deleted them recently. I kind of wanted to take a break from them. I deleted them like 3 or 4 months ago. But like I said, I have gone on a lot more dates than I was in New York. But I haven't really been able to find a good connection with any of these women. Unfortunately, the women in New York are obviously far more materialistic because they have everything. Daddy's got an in-ground swimming pool, so you have to have an in-ground swimming pool. Versus, in parts of like northern Florida or in Georgia, well, they never had those types of luxuries. So it's either they identify with their church or they identify with the woke movement. And again, there's very little secularism, from what I can tell, relocating. And basically, now because of the mass migration, you're dealing with people from all parts of the United States. And even though the majority of the people are white, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because every white person is totally different. Their backgrounds are different. Their family upbringing is totally different. So again, there's this you're constantly off balance when talking to people. So that gives rise to the ego preservation. So when you're on a date, you can't necessarily be yourself because you don't really understand what that person's background is. Versus in New York, even though they might be Puerto Rican, you know what town they're from. You kind of already know, oh, yeah, I know that town. So your parents are probably working class. They're probably from another country. You probably hang out at these spots and do these type of things. So you can relate to them much easier versus, someone that says they're from St. Louis. I don't know anything about St. Louis. And, I can't really build a conversation based on you being from St. Louis, nor can you build a conversation based on my background because you've never been to New York. So that's becoming a huge problem, and you're kind of regressing to the familiar. So I catch myself talking to like my brother, saying, "Yeah, I wish we'd go back to New York," and then we'll call our friends. Hey, how's everything going back over there? And unfortunately, things are not getting any better in New York, and I can probably it's safe to assume it's probably like that on in any major city in the United States now, whether it's LA, San Francisco, Baltimore, Boston. So
Yeah, I've always seen this like just move for greener pastures thing that a lot of manosphere, like Aaron Clarey, he has this book called Reconnaissance Man, and like half his like write-ins seem to be like he would suggest in the past, move from a blue area to a red area, like make it very simple. And he would get these guys that would write in like 2 years later, and they say like, not only can I not find a relationship or anything, I can't even get friends because moving as like a single guy to a whole new area, unless like you're an exception or very spectacular in a lot of different ways, you're going to be there's not going to be anything for you. I mean, how are you going to build
it's worse. I cannot make any guy friends here.
Yeah.
Almost impossible.
Nobody really wants like excess males to like move in, and I think that's why women are really fond of moving. If you see in their dating profiles, they basically say, you know, I moved to this area and I just decided over 1 week, you know, to throw all my stuff into like my VW Golf or whatever car they
Yeah,
have,
right. Yeah,
and I just said screw it. It was spontaneous. It was the most spontaneous thing I've ever done. It's because because if you're a woman, it's
I'm
like
a risk taker.
yeah, it's like you're accepted anywhere in the world. That's why I think that they like traveling is because you any men of any country especially would welcome like a foreign woman with open arms because it's like hey you're helping out the situation here. They have that sexual false consciousness that's hey it's another option here. You know it's really silly, but yeah, I think it's kind of dangerous. It's a very high risk, maybe a high reward potentially. Move to a whole different area from an area where you have like established social circle going back from high school or middle school, and so yeah, it's kind of a gamble, man. I don't I would it was it's you would have to cringe like when I would hear these stories coming from the Aaron Clary crowd that like yeah dude I took your advice and I got a marginally like my rent fell marginally, but like overall you're only like 10% up, like because everything's kind of been standardized. The low living areas are overbid,
Correct.
so you don't win much, but you lose like like a lot of people like passively aggressively, especially the area I'm from. They're like if life's going bad for them, they're like that's it, I'm moving to Texas, and it's like okay, what's that gonna solve for you? Like that. There's someone that called
You're leaving one frying pan and jumping into another one.
you're jumping from the fire pan into the fire. Albert Weskler, he just did a super chat. Thank you, First and Lamprey, for all the Inkwell, Maddox, and MGTOW chats are my favorite shows to listen to. Inkwell and MGTOWs, yeah, I think he has to basically put in numbers in there. It's for the YouTube censorship can coexist. The only difference is the generation you were born into. I agree. That's it's a very generational thing. But going back to this move, as you've kind of, you know, a lot of people talk about it, but you actually walked the walk and you did it. I don't think it's a
Well,
panacea.
it's my second go around actually relocating. Obviously, we talked about my previous experiences living in Southeast Asia. So relocating, it's like a band-aid. You just got to go ahead and do it, and you don't necessarily know what the outcomes are. So it wasn't necessarily as stressful as my first go around. In fact, that is actually more heartbreaking this time around because I truly wanted to stay in New York. I had no intentions of really leaving New York, and now I'm relocated to an. I don't want to say it's inferior, but I just wanted to get away from the blast radius of Times Square because I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy. Well, I'm taking that pretty seriously, and I wanted to relocate to a place that's probably much more safer long term. You know, the thing is that you have to realize that relocating is the second most stressful thing one can do next to having someone you love pass away. So never forget that. If you're actually going to relocate, realize that it's very stressful, it's not easy, and, you know, just, you know, do overthink it. You have to think of what are going to be the pros and cons of this doing this big move of relocating. And the good thing is obviously everyone speaks English. So, you know, you depending on where you're living, you know, crime and cultural differences won't be that a great effect as versus you moving to like, you know, South America or some shit. So if you're a single guy, independent, you don't have that much things to tie you down, I would certainly encourage that, especially if you live in one of these locations that seem to be going in a really bad direction. More specifically, California, Illinois, New York, and most of the New England region.
Yeah, I just think there's one like relocating because there's so many like societal problems and so many like problems with the young generation right now. This panacea of moving for greener pastures, I think it's a grass is green on the other side, and there's a huge gender divide here. For most men, when you move, like I said, you're gonna be in a worse social situation. There's nobody that's gonna want to interact with you. You're gonna have to break into like already established social circles. I don't think that really works, especially like post-COVID, the post-COVID era. as a woman, you're gonna be hollered at if I think that's why women instinctively know when they move into a new area, they put themselves on a dating, because they know how fast they can establish a social circle. There's just no competition between men and moving to a different. I think that's why in society and our discussions in society and mainstream and even alternative venues, we don't discuss the gender split on anything, and how the internet has created such an extreme divide, and how
well, it's hate speech, so you better watch yourself. Don't you dare talk about men's rights.
I feel like there's a better way to conduct. I've had success conducting this in a different matter. You can't just you can't be a spur. You can't be. I mean, a lot of the sphere is just so downrunning and you know, not, you know, at the room temperature IQ. You know, you got to leave those people behind at this point. And there's a way to kind of conduct yourself and explain this issue in a way, because, you know, data backs it up. I just saw someone post LinkedIn today. There's a LinkedIn study. It was on their news blog, that how much easier women have a easier time of getting hired when they do apply. I'm not sure where that went. Things move so fast. But yeah, and then we already know, I posted many times on the show even last year, of that when you compare young women to young men working full time, is that this gender wage gap is completely, it's been propagandized to say that women make less, but when you look at full-time workers in American cities, in some cities it's like 20% difference oh yeah,
you sent me an article about how many more women are going to college now versus
graduating. It's like it's a 70 to 30 split. I mean, that's severe.
Right. As long as the debt cycle continues and you don't allow a market correction, women can keep filling these nonsensical positions like gender studies assistant adjunct at Brown University. Like, what are you contributing to society? Marketing research analyst. And you know, look at like Washington D.C., where they think 40% of the population is single women. This is crazy. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, as long as the banks continue to subsidize multinationals, the government, as long as you're able to paper over the economy, you're not going to allow men to really flourish in society. There's no doubt about it. What you can do to safeguard yourself, especially for guys that are NEETs, and I'm kind of speaking to guys that are like between the ages of like 18 and 25. You don't want to hear it. Probably Aaron Clary has probably said this, and some other boomer fucking waffin. A trade. If you're an electrician, guess what? The world is your oyster. I know Haka's doing really well right now. He's an HVAC tech. Plumbers. Plumbing there's such a shortage for plumbers right now, especially where I am, and there was already a shortage back in New York. You can make bank doing these positions, doing these jobs, because one thing is you don't have to worry about women getting involved. and it's so funny because a lot of unions back in New York are trying to incentivize women to become tradesmen, and they don't want to do it. You're not going to force women to unclog a toilet bowl. I'm sorry, it's not happening. So the more you keep trying to peg a square hole, or whatever the analogy is, it's not happening. And you can always flourish in the chaos, so to speak, because there are opportunities out there. And if you're worried about COVID mandates and stuff like that, if you're an electrician, okay, I'm not doing that job. I'll find another contractor that will hire an unvaccinated dude or whatever it might be. And people are are seriously gambling their health now and their principles and what they stand for based on some type of a mandate that is not actually a mandate. Turns out it's all bullshit. It's kind of a bit of a pump fake from the federal government. You can go to places that don't necessarily agree with those type of with that type of mindset. The normie con, the NPC. You don't have to be there, man. Thing is that as we broach the twilight of abundance, I strongly encourage young men to learn something. If you're spending hours playing video games, you are part of the problem, my friend. You need to wake up and smell what's coming around the corner, because it's going to be your ass that gets burned in the long run. Because who's going to wipe your ass when you're 75 years old and you had a stroke? See what I'm saying? You don't think that you're going to get old someday.
I'm completely on the opposite. I think guys that are dropping out, that are becoming NEETs, they're heroes. I think they're heroes by they're kind of like revolutionaries in their own way, without firing a shot and doing, because this society, if you have nothing going for yourself as a guy, why would you go do back-breaking work, literally, as a electrician, plumber, and HVAC, whatever. Steve Hoka tells me that he has to go 100 miles out just to cover a call, because there's so few. I don't see, what's the incentive for young guys going in? And you're saying 75, what's the point of living between 50 and 75 if you've been miserable already? Most of those people live because they have good memories, if they have grandchildren or something. I think a lot of guys are going to take the Smith & Wesson Glock or whatever. I'm not saying you should do this, but
yeah, and blow their brains out.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, I will agree with you. I will agree with you, because if this thing does go tits up, yeah, you'll see a monster amount of suicides, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and no, I think guys that are finding ways around, because what if you, as an incel man, that you didn't, in society, the only reason why it needs you at this point is to be a plumber, is to be an electrician, is these jobs that women don't want to do. That's the only reason for, you're not going to be in a reproduction game. You're not going to be in having kids game. You don't really have a long-term outlook. You're just going to, wither away to see media get worse and worse, like the video games.
But you're assuming that there's always going to be abundance of food, water, and things to go around. For now, we do. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, for now, yeah.
Twilight of abundance, but people can take way worse. I mean, look how people accepted the mandates and everything. People can take way worse situation. People can bear out worse situations. We haven't hit the bottom. We're nowhere near the bottom. Society can bear a lot more before it unravels. Unfortunately, I'd be skeptical if we even would see quote unquote collapse in our lifetimes. But it is there. The twilight of abundance is there.
It's a managed collapse, and that's what they're trying to. They're trying to prevent a black swan moment. They're trying to prevent a collapse per se in what me and you may think of what a collapse is. That's where just, the ATM's not working, I can't get my money out, and everyone's pulling out AR-15s and going fucking berserk, right? They're doing everything they can to prevent something like that from happening, because let's say if they didn't raise the debt ceiling and they actually, tweaked the, interest rates, well, we can't handle that as a society. We're so used of just the money printer go burn, right? So if we continue going down this path where they're diminishing expectations of the middle class, yeah, sure, now you can still eat your Hot Pocket and fucking play video games, but who's to say in 10 years you're still going to have that? Furthermore, how are you going to put a roof over your head? You may inherit your family's property, but you still got to pay for the upkeep, maintaining it, property tax, and golly knows what else in the unforeseeable future.
That's how I think young men should, what they're doing by dropping out. I mean, I think that's a hero move. That's a good move for, I respect that, because what is this planning for the future? If you've already lived a miserable past, why, when it gets hard and hard, okay, we're going to wither away, whatever. What are you fighting for? I don't understand. Like this future plannings.
You're just going to die. Fuck it.
I mean, we're all gonna die at one point, but it's like I really don't see like it get so extreme that has to be like the battle we fight right now is to basically take our own lives of how bad the situation is getting on the ground in reality. That's kind of life is for the most part in the situation in your own hands. If you want to continue or not. I don't think we're ever going to have to force to like face that question of imminent death. Sure,
right, but you think of it this way, when communist revolutions happen, or any type of revolution for that matter, doesn't have to be communism. You didn't see people just start offing themselves; they look to survive. Right,
that's what these guys are doing. They're surviving with less. They're dropping out. They're doing NEET bucks. They're doing.
Right, but here's the thing. I'm playing devil's advocate with you. Let's say, what do you have to contribute as a dude if let's say shit were to go tits up and we descend into tribalism. Let's say I'm part of tribe A, right? And you want to join my tribe because all the dudes here know how to do shit. You know, like I know how to disassemble a gun and know how to, jerry rig a generator. What do? Well, I'm good at Call of Duty. I can, hot pocket and my pornos. Dude, get the fuck out of my group because you're fucking useless. And you're the type of person I have to worry about because you don't know shit. You're insecure. You don't know shit. And you might come and take my shit. So these are the type of people you have to start worrying about if shit were to go tits up.
There's so many. I mean, 51% of men 18 to 29 in America are now single. In the UK college system, where it has an abundance of women there too. 66% of men report that they did not have sex in last year. So
I don't want to get into dick. It's not. I'm not trying to get in a dick swing and alpha contest and shit. But if you're not confident about yourself and you don't feel you have anything to contribute to society, yeah, you have big problems. You have major problems. So granted, we're still living off the fumes of a monster rise. America is probably the greatest civilization since the Roman Empire, even though the Roman Empire lasted for decades upon decades, centuries upon centuries. The United States is 2 centuries short of 3 centuries. Things can go. If you look back at history, I love history. The world has been nothing but death and horror. Okay, and you have to take that into consideration because most Americans do not, in any way, shape, or form, take that into consideration. They live in the constant, infinite present. Right, it's perpetual Disney dreams. Disney World is always going to be there, and you can't really look at how well women are doing because that's really a false. It's not a really good way of gauging. It's a bad barometer on gauging where you are. You look at what the men are doing. If the men are just laying down, rolling over, and your border's wide open, and you got trannies running your fucking military, dude, you got big problems coming, dude. Big problems. I think it was Elon Musk said it when he was on Joe Rogan. I hate Joe Rogan, Toe Rogan, and I definitely do not like Elon Musk. But he said something, pretty basic. If people stop working, shit stops. That's it.
Right.
Okay. If your workforce is sitting on its ass and you're dependent on some big agra to fucking feed your face, well, someone controls that. And that person wants you dependent on the system. Okay. So if they roll out something like UBI, but you gotta take some vaccine or you gotta embrace the tranny flag. You as a guy, are you okay with embracing the tranny flag? What do you stand for as a man? What are your principles? It can't just be consumerism. I keep saying Hot Pockets, DiGiorno pizzas, and Taco Bell and my pornos. It's really bad. I'm not necessarily about that. I think a lot of the NEETs, their upbringing was stunted one way or another. When I was 10, 12, 13 years old, all the guys that I idolized were men, dude. They got shit together. They were doing things that I can never do, and they had personalities that I always wanted to have, being stoic, knowing a bunch of shit, being liked, being respected amongst other men, shit like that, So if you listen to Nirvana and mumble rap and other degenerate shit, well, that's what you're gonna embrace the black pill much easier versus someone who always looked up to guys who got shit done. And again, I'm not ripping on anyone that's listening to this live stream, and I'm not trying to build myself up because I know a lot of your listeners tend to think I'm that type of person. I'm really not. I mean, I embrace the black pill with a lot of different things. Yeah, we'll let guests
on that. People. If you have your criticism of Lamprey, come on the show. The air is open. There's some guests waiting, and
I wouldn't necessarily embrace the Hamlet life where everything sucks. You're gonna die. What's the point in striving for something? I mean, you're here on this earth for a reason, and it's your job to kind of sort it out. You may never sort it out while you're here.
Let it all collapse. It's over. Floyds will live with the consequence of their reactions. America is being humiliated by China and Russia. We did our previous streams, and Are women going to see the consequences? Because for every man that's not at our
They'll never
lifetimes.
see it coming. They're
But
still
for every
having
man
avocado
that's
toast.
like, oh yeah, I'm dropping out, and like there'll be like 10 other men that will run to the rescue of a woman. That's the whole societal thing. I don't know. These women, they, like Ginger Cell said in this video, it's a woman's world. Women tend to fail up. Like if they keep failing, you know, they'll just get pregnant, have a kid, and they'll have the same social status as like the top guy that's a doctor or lawyer. You know, they're like, you know, as soon as they have a kid, they're on everyone's news feeds and everything. I want to also, I finally found this and I put it up here. It's a LinkedIn talent blog. It says women are likely to get hired once they apply, and women are 16% more likely than men to get hired after applying for a job, 18% more likely than men to get hired after applying to more senior roles. So, which means higher wages and better conditions. And this is in 2020, 2021. I bet these are higher. And it says the good news, you know, see, this is how they treat this. LinkedIn is a major company. It's probably perhaps turning to the number one ways of finding a decent job. The good news is that when women do apply for a job, they're 16% more likely than men to get hired. They see how they word it? They say it's good news. See, this is what they think of excess men at this point. In fact, if the role is more senior than the current position, that number goes to 18%. So this is LinkedIn, and probably the largest company at this point for allocating labor at this point. So, and then you know what's funny, in the same week, I think a month ago, Jordan Peterson, Tim Pool, and Scott Galloway, three very big figures that kind of intersect with the manosphere, some more or less. They all started touching on this issue of, they use dating apps as a way to say, hey, things between the genders are very terrible. And I just find that kind of suspicious. They all did in the same week, but Scott Galloway had the best out of all those three. Scott Galloway had the best thing. First of all, he went on live on CNN, and he's an NYU professor. He's a big entrepreneur. He's been on, you know, dozens of different shows, and he, you know, talked to Andrew Yang about this issue. And he said, like, he warned, you know, what's going on in dating apps, of how the winner, it's a winner take all situation there. And he said that he ended his speech on CNN Live. He said the worst thing a society can have is a bunch of broke and single men, and that's how it ended. So I think he had the best things to say on this whole topic, and I'm glad he did. At least there's some, you know, there's some warning signs, you know, that this is what's gonna enjoy the labor crisis, because this is what's, you know, young men don't have any game to play in this society.
They didn't train you. They didn't give a fuck about you. That's the problem. Boomer didn't give a shit. And in fact, what's Boomer doing right now? Well, they're buying up more houses. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And and you're just like a cinder block, you know, just dead weight at this point. And you provide, you know what it is that baby boomer, you provide emotional support for them because you're always around, and they don't want you to leave that house. That's the other thing you have to realize, is that your parents, your especially your mom, doesn't want you to leave, especially if you come from a broken home. Okay, so dad's pissed off. He lives in another state. You know, he probably remarried. You don't give a fuck about your mom anymore. Your mom probably still nags him through text messages and leaving him voicemails and stuff. You owe me money. You're a deadbeat. You're a son of a bitch, right? And you're living with your mom. If you leave your mom, she's got no one, and she's probably going to start harassing you through text messages and phone calls and such. So your parents don't necessarily want you to leave them, because they're left with a void, so to speak. And what further exasperates that is that you don't have any grandchildren. So, you know, naturally, it's not like you have a kid now and you can leave your son or daughter with your parents to watch and raise them when you go to work, which is quite common in most other countries. So boomers don't want to let go of their material wealth. They don't want to let go of you because you provide emotional support.
Yeah, that's also a kind of a issue that's not really touched upon. Brendan Caro did a $20 donation, doesn't say anything. Thank you, Brendan. I do want to move on and accept some guests to kind of like maybe touch upon different subjects that we went over. Maybe it's always interesting. I'm going to try to get one in here now and see what he has to say. Mystery School, you are live.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good. How
Hello.
are you? What did you want to talk about tonight?
Yeah, I actually live in the DC area, and what you guys said about the area is actually really true. There's actually a lot of them. I actually have a lot of have a decent amount of luck on dating apps like Hinge, and the amount of women I see who have like their own job, who like make more than I do, and these women don't have like STEM degrees; they have like sociology degrees, and like so they make more money than I do having like a lesser degree, and they have like their own places as well. Like they have their own stuff, they have their own cars. Like basically, like there's nothing you can like give a woman at this point that they
Right.
don't already have.
Yep.
And another huge issue I'm finding right now is that like when you ask a woman, like I've actually asked these women, like, what do you actually want from a man at this point? Because like, like you have everything you need basically, and it's like when you ask that question, they give you like a blank stare because they don't even know,
Mhm.
like they don't even know what they want from you. It's so odd. Like these women have like zero clue. I think they're just as lost as the men are to some extent, to a large extent.
What
Actually,
more shit? What do you have?
who me?
I'm just saying, I'm being the typical chick you meet on Hinge.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
They have everything. What do you bring to the table besides dick? I want a guy that has his shit together. Well, can you please define that? Your home's bigger than my home. You drive a newer car than I do. I'm a dude, so I gotta think, strategically on how I'm gonna fucking survive, and not about what type of puppy chow I'm giving my little pit bull today.
Yeah, there's so much like that goes into like the dating sphere now, where it's like like you have to keep like going higher and higher and higher and higher and higher to impress a woman, because like having your own condo and a decent car doesn't cut it anymore.
It
Like
doesn't cut it. Yeah.
you have to keep like going higher. Like now you have a mansion, like and
You need an
a
airplane,
BMW
plane
5 Series or something like that. Now like it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's getting insane how much like you have to keep putting into the system in order to keep getting to get less and less and less at this point. Because like I said earlier, women have everything anything that a man used to provide, women have now. Like they have decent jobs. Like the old meme about like the old these memes about females getting degrees in sociology or psychology and then like burning out after like college. No way, dude. That meme is such a lie now. Like so many women I've met who have like psychology degrees, sociology degrees, they work in like HR. They work in these like make work jobs. So they make like close to six figures. Not $90,000 a year, $70,000 a year, and they're making good money. And it's like, okay, so like when I approach these women, I'm like, what exactly do you want me to do for you? Because like other than like sex, like there's not much else I can give you. Like you have everything that a man could provide for you typically. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
man. And look, I'm sorry. Sorry, go on first.
yeah, that's why we're seeing things like plane game being run, like I talk about, like basically guys resorting to taking pictures with airplanes and whatnot. I mean, just because an M5 is not good enough anymore. Your own place is not good. Basically, it's cutting neck and neck. I don't understand how like men still use dating apps for what's kind of the reason, knowing like what happens on there. You do realize that I mean, I know you guys understand it, but what happens is if women have with the way they are now, they are going to look for purely aesthetic things. I mean that's why these dating apps are purely visual, because there's nothing left. They're not looking for character or financial stability or anything like that. It's going to be purely aesthetic. But the thing is, I do think for a lot of guys, it's unless you're close to male model, you're not going to get much on a dating app. And the people that want to like kind of disagree with this, run your own experiments on these apps, because one part of science is replication, and these experiments, yeah, they're somewhat flawed because you're selecting from a already like what woman needs to use a dating apps. Usually it's crazy single moms, very tall women too. But still, like there's a method to success there. There's different ways. I hope to bring on a guest that he basically dressed up as a girl and he got like a ton of matches doing that, which is weird. And he got a decent looking girlfriend out of it. But there's like, yeah, you need to be like extremely exceptional using these methods to really get much anything of worth.
Yeah, because at this point, just having like your stuff together, having your shit together, it does get your foot in the door nowadays. But it doesn't guarantee anything past like a first date at this point. Like what I'm saying now, the first date or the second date might go well, but you never really get to the third date where you actually have like the.
No, it's
you
always the
bump up,
second
like,
date.
yeah.
It goes to it goes.
Yeah,
to hits
that's
up
what I
after the
hear
second
from
date.
Yeah.
a guy a bit younger than you, Lamprey, but in your generation. He said, yeah, there's like a second date curse, and I've experienced this too. Yeah, it's like the second date is like a make or break moment usually. I mean, that's like exhausting. Even if you have quote unquote options, and it's like doing these like date things like that. I think that gets like really exhausting. At this point, like the best course of action for America is just to legalize prostitution broadly. So you don't have, there's the thriving website during COVID is called skipthegames.com, and apparently so many men are using that to skip the games, just pay for it. So I think that's
yeah, at least it's more honest. Like hell,
that's what we have to go to, because there's so many guys hitting up women, because they're kind of driven insane by their celibacy. Yeah, at this point you need Mexico, a third world country, did this. They regulated a system that works, and I think it's time for America to grow up and leave its Protestant value behind, because men aren't needed in the system anymore for reproduction anymore. That's what the society kind of decided, and they don't even want to talk about it. So again, what does that tell you about the value of most men? If LinkedIn is saying this is a good thing that women are getting hired over men by a significant margin, yeah, it's time to basically skip the games of this whole life dynamic, and let us mature and say, yeah, most men are gonna have a pretty terrible life in terms of romance and sociability.
Yeah, it's honestly really like creepy just how like the games are so flipped on us now. Where like like men were so valued back in the past, and now it's like if you're a man, it's like you're completely like a second class citizen now. Like you're literally just like you might as well not even exist. And like there's so many excess men now, it's not even like funny. Like we need something but there's no like escape valve. Like there's all the escape valves are gone.
The escape valve, and I mean we're all American here. I think what's going on. Look, the most strongest section of Twitter is sex workers. They have like the strongest like presence because they have themselves, which they have a very monetary incentive to kind of drive their content, but they also have like a ton of like simps that act as like a free white knight army on there. And like they defend, like if you say anything against like sex workers on Twitter, get ready, you're gonna get destroyed. I mean, they're a very powerful block, and we're seeing the rise of OnlyFans and stuff like that. This like all the housing bubble in China, the labor shortage, like all these macro problems. The number one or two problem in these things driving these issues is always going to be is the position of men, and how men are basically rendered to drop out of society. Because again, if you I don't know why we ignore this issue so much, because people in relationships, when they interview those people, there's a broad satisfaction survey of like 10,000 people they did, and they said most people rate their best satisfaction overwhelmingly is that sex and relationships. But then these same people, they tell you don't worry about it when you complain it. They say, oh, don't worry about it, self-improve till like you're dead. Basically, that's what they tell you. It's this endless. They tell you to go on the self-improvement treadmill forever. And then like if you come back 10 years and say, yeah, I did all this, I got my degree, I went to all these countries, I built I built an amazing career, I did this, I got my house and everything. They say, oh, well, that's not enough. You're not entitled to shit. So. Yeah,
and then like you have this like an astonishing like level of like when we covered I covered this on my stream as well, when it talks about the men dropping out of college and really dropping out of society in general. Like it amazes me how like people don't see, like you do realize there's a reason why for that, right? Like people act as if like men just like somehow were successful in the past because they were just successful, like as if like there was no causal link between like the amount of investment that we put into boys and men back in the past that led them to be successful. And it's really weird how we just like all the investment now goes to women now, and we're sitting here, society's now sitting here wondering, well, why aren't men excelling now? Like as if men were just excelling just because they were supposed to be excelling like automatically or something like that. It makes zero sense. Like not every man is like self-made. Most men aren't self-made. Most men, no man's an island, and most people have to have some sort of like leg up to make it into the market to some extent. So
there's a quote actually about like self-made men, like behind every man is like a woman. I'm not sure what the exact quote is, but I think that's really is if you don't get this positive reinforcement in life. See, there is 51% of men. Most normie men are now incel. 18 to 29 in the UK especially, and here we're seeing these numbers. They're rising very fast. So. But the thing is like what Jordan Peterson talks about. I'm not a favor of the guy or anything. I'm a critic, but he did say something really prolific in one of his lectures. He said that, most violence and most frustration with a zeitgeist isn't caused by like everyone being poor. it's caused by like inequality, and I think that's what like even Marxism doesn't even touch on this. It only talks about like material reality, but doesn't talk about like the social aspects. Like if you're a guy and you're going on TikTok or Instagram and you're seeing like other couples and you're seeing guys succeeding with women, and while you have nothing, and you keep getting exposed to this because that's what's going to happen in society, and especially American society only focuses on the winners, and for the winners to be there you need a lot of losers in comparison. So basically you're exposed to this over and over and over again, and it's like, yeah, I'm missing out on this critical portion of life. I don't even understand how men even make it anymore in life. I'm so surprised at how many are still like in this sphere are alive. Like it's a mile of achievement that so many guys are still making it in life based on all these negative factors.
I just oftentimes wonder, and I say this a lot on my stream, for the most part, is that like, what are these people going to do, like Zoomers and parts of Gen Y going to do when they hit age 15 with no one there to like take care of them? Like,
that's what I was just asking.
Like, yeah, there's nobody there to help you out, no one there to take care of you. And what are these women going to do when they hit age? It's going to happen to the whole system in general. What are these people going to do? Like, what are you going to do when like there's no one around the you can't go home to your parents' house for Christmas dinner or for Thanksgiving dinner? Like, there's no one to go to.
I tell, what I would tell to all the stream is, don't worry about it. I mean, life really matters. In my opinion, it's not whatever. It's like your life matters the most is like 15 to like 35, and after that it's like it's a slog, man. Your body's gonna break down. Like who unless you have like kids or grandkids, who cares what happens between like 50 and 70? It's like that life 50 to 90. What's the point
of
rough 50 to 90 if you had a rough life, you don't like where society's going? I'm not telling people like you have no point. Like I mean, there's no point to life. I'm just saying, like, realistically looking at it, if you're miserable now and you have a past that's miserable, what are you gonna use to keep you alive? I mean, people use good memories and good things. Like everyone that's like I have kids, man. I have kids back at home. I need to survive or whatever. Like, as most insular don't have that to get going. So what's going to drive them to live to 50 to 90, and why should that be a crowning achievement? Why should that be even a worry? I got to get my shit intact. It's like, dude, and society is not even going to be a pleasurable place. The way it's going, it's not going to be such a pleasant place to be around anyways. If you can find a cope to keep you alive, that's the best thing for you. But still, I just don't see like why. I wouldn't worry about this stuff, honestly. Because I'm not gonna say what it is. There's always an easy out of all of this,
we know. We all know what you're talking about. Yeah,
we know. So I gotta get my why. You don't have a family, you don't have kids. Enjoy your life, enjoy your copes. Drop out. Don't let the system like get blood out of a stone for your labor. That's all the system wants from you, is to go to plumbing school, is to go to HVAC school, go electrician, and fix all this neon signs that the top men and women are experiencing. What's the point? What's the point of participating in this society? I don't understand.
Yeah, at some point only a winning move is not to play at this point, right?
Yeah. And I honestly think the guys that find a way to NEET, the guys that find a way to drop out, the guys that find a way to be a negative marker in the GDP, you guys are heroes. You guys are kind of part of the, like, you are protesting in a very good way. I think it's a very healthy way, because again, it's not violent or anything, or it is the perfect way. It's to saying, I have nothing in the system. I'm gonna lazy it out. I think that's a hero move to me. But that's my opinion. People can debate me on that.
All right, well, that's all I really had to say, so I'm good.
All right, man. I'll move on to the next guest then. Yeah, thank you, Mystery School. I do.
Yeah, right on, man.
Yeah, I enjoy your streams, and hopefully I can get on your stream sometime soon.
Yeah, we gotta get that set up at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know me and you have a lot to talk about. Thank you, Mystery School. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. See you next time.
And then I think there's another guest. Waiting, Lamper. Do you have anything to kind of
no?
Together? We'll move on to the next.
I was just gonna say, what's hang on, I just had it.
I know our views are like opposed on this. I'm just thinking a lot differently on this now. Like,
in a poor country, men pimp out young women. When young women eagerly pimp themselves out, the country's dead.
Yeah, and that's what's going on. I just I don't want to like basically. Yeah, there's impending doom, but like whatever. Like, it's not like we live such good lives anyways. That's a silver lining about living like like if you live this extremely good life, I imagine the more you get older, it's like, oh my god, this is gonna be over at some point. I can't believe it. Like maybe that's the case for these people, but that's a silver lining is eventually this suffering that a lot of people are going through is gonna end.
I think a lot of NEETs just don't have anxiety about the future, which is a good thing in a lot of ways. I know many
I honestly
guys.
think at this point you shouldn't be like, yeah, we're not gonna get our gaming consoles or whatever, but I'm not gonna sell this thing of imminent collapse and fear. It's like just maximize your copes. Don't worry about it. I mean, yeah, this parent thing is like a lot of parents just want you as like a money bag to support them and be a nurse for them. Like at this point, the way society has thrown men under the bus, you are a hero if you drop out of this. You are a hero if you contribute less. If you go ahead and pollute as well. This oh, you guys gotta stop with this. For climate. Who cares about the climate? I hope it boils. I hope this in 100 years, this whole planet's a boiling thing like Mustafar or like from Star Wars. Because because why? Because why should we not pollute? Why should I go get a Prius? Why? Because this thing they tell us all to all be in this thing together. Let's all like go green. Why? You guys are the ones with kids. You guys are the ones with the future. You guys are the ones that winning. Why should we get on that bus? For you? Not for us. So it doesn't matter.
Who and for what?
Yeah, exactly.
For who? For what?
Yeah. I'm going to get another guest on. If you guys want to be a guest, I'll drop the link. Yeah,
by all means.
Rakawi, you're on the show.
Hello. What's going on there, brother? Read down, kid.
I'll move on to the next guest. People tend to fall asleep in the waiting bay, and
to build upon what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with you, because at the end of the day, do you defend something that doesn't want to be defended? Do you white knight for your collective schizophrenia? This that's really what it is. We're living in a very inverted society right now, where women can be men and men can be women, right? And there's no stopgaps to that, so you might as well just check out. And
the way the society, like when you go out in a downtown, like the reason why you see couples is because it's made for couples. There's no real place made for single men. And like there's a good book about this, like Bowling Alone, by Robert Putnam. Like that book is really like that's what it puts down. It's like these bowling leagues or whatever. There's like the venues for men are decreasing for them to like. Society doesn't really want to see, I think, young men in groups in major like urban centers. They just want to see couples. They want to see young women shopping. I mean, it's just obvious with the way things are built up, the way stores are. I mean, you look at Instagram, you look at how people catalog their lives. It's basically young men like sitting inside all day playing Apex Legends or Fortnite, these free games. And then it's like women going to high-priced restaurants. I'm not trying to generalize, but this is what it seems like an experience that Zoomer males like. There's caste basically. You're a young woman or a young man, and they're living two different economic realities. What else is there left to do except minimize your participation in society? Because everywhere you go, you're just reminded, you're getting mocked, or you're reminded of what you don't have. Like, why would you go to these venues as a young man when it's all couples and you only see the few guys that do succeed and all of this?
Society hates single men. Bottom line, and I think it was what's that guy?
Thank you for your donation, Hayashi, or Bobby.
Who's that Asian dude that Haka speaks with?
Oh,
Happier Abroad.
Happier.
He covers that very well.
Yeah, Happier Abroad, like, I don't know what to say about that, because he's taking pictures of Slavic women during the 90s when the Soviet Union collapsed. Like, of course, yeah. I mean, it's a different game now. It's 30 years later. Again, I say this, boomer solutions do not work for Gen X problems. Gen X solutions do not work for millennial problems. Gen Z problems aren't solved by millennial solutions. So the field, even this Geomax thing, you've done it. So many guys are coping with the Geomax. You've done it for 4 years in Cambodia, and you saw it's not as viable as guys make it out to be.
No, I saw one guy talking about going to Pattaya, Thailand. You're just getting a bunch of Thai single moms. It's not like you're getting hot 20-year-olds or anything. Last time I went, I'm like the selection of women was god awful. So I don't necessarily recommend that, getting on a 24-hour flight. And, look, if you want to get your rocks off for a couple of weeks, more power to you. But
Yeah, a couple of
you're
weeks,
not.
yeah, sure. But
It's a coat.
It's a Geomax is this thing is. I mean, I'm not telling the guys. I want to see more guys do it so they can document what's going on. But I think a lot of guys, like, it's such a, like, young women now, like I was talking to, like, a young girl from Thailand, and her life is, like, it's the same as, like, a Becky here. Like, she has her Starbucks, she has, like, her nice meals, she has every electronics you can think of. She has, like, all, and she, like, even talks that way, even though she's not even from this country. Like, she's just as obnoxious, if not more, than like a common girl here, because, like, that, like, what's going on is the world's becoming flat, not in the geometric way, but in like the socio-economic way, is that women are going to be like a woman in third world right now in a lot of third world countries, not every single one, but they're going to be living a better life than a Western guy in a first world country. Some Western, that's what's going to happen, is because so much simp money, so much attention is going to flow through her by the excess men of the world. That's the thing, is we have so many excess men and so many men left out of the dating market in their own respective countries. They have to go to these venues. It's insane. It's insane. I mean,
you're not getting the best crop of women doing that neither, which I was insinuating in our last live stream about doing those type of things. And the more women emulate men, the more self-absorbed we become as a society. The Discord is jaded, where you don't even know who the hell you're talking to. Is it an enemy, or is it someone I'm trying to sleep with and, have some type of bond with, right? So naturally become a recluse and get lost in social media, where now you envy everyone you see. So you envy the Chad, you envy the Stacy, right? So instead of admiring someone who is smarter than you, and you learn from that individual, you rather drag them down. And so in fact, envy is pathological. And unfortunately, the United States is a narcissistic society, and probably the most narcissistic in the entire world. I'm meeting people from the West Coast. I've never met people from the West Coast in my life up until recently. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you people, man? You guys got to go back to California, Oregon, and Washington. Like, I mean, I got stories of meeting people from the West Coast. Like, it's just totally not culturally compatible with people from the East Coast, which is much more old world. Like, I was talking to one dude, a dude from Beverly Hills, actually, and he was telling me that the Kardashians are like the coolest thing in California, whereas in New York, no one gives a fuck about the Kardashians. I mean, we see it in the media and such, but no one's actually watching, keeping up with the Kardashians, because that's a very West Coast thing,
Yeah, that's true. It's
I'm talking, obviously cultural differences and such, but yeah, basically through soft power, through women's rights, that is being fostered upon the entire world by multinationals, NGOs, and non-for-profits, you're seeing women from the third world also being pulled up to a certain status. So countries in in the Middle East, in Asia, Eastern European countries, even South America, if there's no instability economically and there's no external threats or wars or what have you, yeah, naturally women are just going to start to rise in wealth and prosperity, and men will get driven down. It's not just the United States. You can look at the West Coast in America as a weather vane on what's coming to wherever part of the world you live in. You're just X amount of years behind what's being foisted upon the people of California, as you use that as kind of as a guidepost, a goalpost, or whatever.
I'm gonna get under
Do we get
in here. No, he's having issues.
No worries, man. Listen, I understand the NEET mindset. I got brothers that are NEETs, and they kind of just live off the wealth of their extended family and their immediate family, and they seriously have no drive or will. My stepbrother, he has serious anxiety issues. He's a Zoomer, and he just is he's catatonic, bro. He just can't put his shit. He can't get his shit together. He blames everyone else. It's your fault. You didn't love me. You know.
Why should he get his shit together? Is my question.
Again, you know, I think that goes back to your fundamentals as an individual and your early childhood upbringing. I can never live that way. I personally want a lot out of life. You know, that's just me.
We have another guest in here. I'm not sure if he can hear us, but you can go ahead.
I'm just saying I could never live that way. I can't. I have too many things.
I can't live that way either. But I definitely understand it from another perspective. And again, I think they're NEETs and dropouts are heroes of this story. You know, to me.
I just find it to be a cop out. Like, oh, it's just everything shit, so I'm just gonna eat a Hot Pocket and be a sack of gas on the fucking couch. Like, fuck you, dude. Like, get the fuck out of here. I just can't respect that shit. You know, and I know a lot of people now. I know guys that are now 30 that live that life.
Do that. I hope and then there's no more truck drivers. There's no more plumbers. They're gonna automate some of that too, but there's still gonna be a shock. You know, I wouldn't say. If you're not happy with the system, don't work so much to keep the system alive. I'm gonna try.
I don't think you can go. You can go anywhere and not be happy with the system. You know.
Count Woodlands, you're in the stream.
What up? What up?
Everyone I get in here, like, oh, was that him?
You're gonna eat the bug and like it.
I think some guys will go for cannibalism.
Also realize that society stresses the individual over the community, which fuels the NEET mindset. You know, I talk about minimalism quite a bit on my live stream, and I've had guests on my show talking about minimalism. And let's kind of understand the crux and the concept of minimalism, because NEETs do fall into that category. It's part of being a responsible, sustainable world citizen. So by you not doing anything, you're playing right into the hands of the people that are propagating these type of problems. I believe, and as we discussed previously on my show, minimalism is a way of brainwashing men, not just to consume resources, but to curb their work ethic. The less you work, the less money you will have, the less goods you will consume. So America obviously has a big appetite for useless junk, and that's why you're seeing what's going on with Long Beach and the ports and shit. The storage, like, you look at storage facilities, like, that's sort of coming about like 20 years ago. Like, do you have that much shit that you need to house your stuff in you know, a rental box on the other side of town? You see what I'm saying? Like, that's really bizarre for society to have that much shit that you need to store it in a warehouse somewhere. But I do think the NEETs kind of fall right into the power being's hands, where again you're curbing your worth ethic, which curbs consumption.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then the NEET buck system won't, you know, survive too. I mean, we're already seen the drawbacks of Social Security is not going to make. That's demographically based too.
What your problem is, you're going to wind up being dependent on a system at some point. So if you're already dependent on your parents, do you really want to still be dependent on your parents when you're 40? You see what I'm saying? Like, okay, your parents die, you wind up on UBI or some other bullshit, you're still being dependent on external factors which you cannot control, versus if you have, if you're an independent contractor, 1099 gig work or whatever, you're at least somewhat independent to others, so to speak. So that's why I'm not a big fan of the NEET mindset, because you're relying on externals that you really shouldn't be relying on. So if you got a house, let's say you become a hermit, you buy a shitty little condo, and you try paying it off as soon as possible. Well, now since you paid it off, you don't nearly have to work as much. or you can default and go on welfare and still make your mortgage payments.
You
see what I'm saying?
The whole property thing is that's another thing that's not talked about with this incel single male situation. When you go on the property market, not only are you competing with foreign billionaires, you're competing against couples. So even if you are the STEM maxed geek and you make like 100 grand, if there's two couples, you know, they're both making 75, they outbid you, even if you're higher IQ than them, or you're like much better, whatever it is. Like these delusions, you're competing against couples, you're competing against the guys that can pair up. So that's the thing, they'll outbid you every time, and they'll get a mortgage approved way easier. Two incomes is much better than one, even if they're less, because if one person gets fired in that situation, you still have one. But for you, if something happens to you, that's it. So banks, you know, we talk about a bachelor's tax. We already have a bachelor's tax here, like the MGTOWs were, you know, prophesizing about. It's the stimulus check itself was because if you make 100 grand by yourself, you're not getting anything. But if you're a couple making that, you'll still get the 24 or 2,800, whatever. And now we're seeing pro-natalist policies being passed in Congress to give people with kids 7,200. That's basically an anti-incel bill. That's an anti-bachelor bill, because you know, most of the time the people who can have kids by themselves are single moms, because that's like very easy to go do, as you know, a woman can get pregnant in a week of swiping Tinder. So that's the thing. Ultimately, it's a negative towards all these policies are being passed to make it harder to make it as a man working. That's the thing, is the $7,200 child tax credit and payments directly to you, and you're going to be competing against these couples who are backed by the government. You're blowing your nose while unmuted, by the way.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. But yeah, it's, again, the game is so rigged against even if you're gonna try to like tough it out, it's like, I'm gonna be a working man, I'm gonna be that plumber 60 hours a week. Like your back's gonna give out, your bones are gonna hurt, you're gonna wake up, and you're only gonna be like more stressed for that. If you want to pursue that. But I just see so like you're gonna burn yourself out like much faster in that way, pursuing that.
Oh, totally, man. I mean, I had like a stomach ulcer a few months ago. I had a few health issues this past year, whether that's me getting older, but also kind of burning myself out, running the gambit, being on the rat wheel. It's way harder. I just can't believe how much things have gone up in price in the past year. But again, you know, if you go back to March, April of 2020, I tried shorting the Dow Jones like a fool. And I remember telling my best friend, I go, listen, if this stock market goes up and doesn't go down, we have way bigger problems at hand. And that's where we are today. Everything's just going up in price.
Yeah, so even if you do have all this money coming in, you know, what are you going to spend it on? Cars are out of reach because there's such a shortage of the chips. The logic chips to make them. Looking video game consoles, the new consoles, you know, that's what guys.
Video cards.
Yeah, video cards. All these coping mechanisms that guys, you know, use. It's like it's gonna get harder and harder to get.
Taking away. That's what I'm trying to say. They're taking it away from you. They're taking the bread and circuses away from you. So even if you want to be a NEET, they're slowly eroding that NEET lifestyle. That's why I'm trying to send up signal flares saying you may want to just learn something that may be useful down the line, rather than just being in a warm body for cannon fodder for GDP. I don't see that being a very good idea. You know, circling back to the NEET mindset for a moment, Western men for centuries have had onlookers: wife, children, parents, grandparents, cousins, neighbors, teachers, classmates, etc., etc. Today, this is shattered. All these people are adrift in their minds. They're preoccupied in their minds with trivial pursuits. The Santorini dreams for the thought, the fishing trip for the Billy Bobs, right? So, you know, you're kind of just, again, living off this abundance that is being, you know, slowly eroded from underneath your feet. You know, it's sitting on a mudsill. And I keep telling my best friend, he's still in New York, and I keep telling him, I go, listen, you're still in first class dining complaining about the fucking silverware and how your napkin's not you know, rolled in the way it should be because you paid so much money to be on the Titanic. Meanwhile, everyone's fucking freaking out, trying to get on lifeboats. You're sitting there asking again, why is the chandelier tilting in one direction towards the bow, because the ship is sinking right now? And he started laughing. He goes, you know, that's kind of right. I feel like I'm the last person still sitting in first class dining on the Titanic. And you have to also realize something. The thought doesn't know that. That when this shit hits, where's she gonna be? Where's the dog mom gonna be during the chaos phase? Huh? Does anybody know? So you can't, again, as a man, you can't gauge what women are doing for your own personal well-being. Oh, look at she's going to Santorini. Look how well they're doing. Oh, she's going to Colgate. You know, she just graduated Brown University and she's gonna be a star. The fuck that shit. I got friends I got friends that graduated, Ivy League colleges, and they're trying to figure out, how to work they're trying to figure out how to use a Stucher kit in case, their leg gets blown off or something during a war or something, because you don't know what's coming. That's what I'm saying. The people that are running the world right now are overplaying their hand. They're trying to bring about this utopia, this grand vision, sustainable development, which is Agenda 21. You guys should all know about these type of things. The Great Reset is Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. I don't give a shit what you want to call it. It's all UN doctrine. They're going to overplay their hand. When you start talking about taking cars away by 2030, Cadillac is no longer making gas-powered vehicles by 2025. Where are you going to be? Where are you going to be? This is not a joke. Okay, so you need to drop that 2019 mindset of my pornos and Hot Pocket and start thinking about what these people are really trying to bring about.
Mr. X, you're on but you're echoing, so.
Oh, okay. Oh, no. Oh, okay. Am I online?
Yes.
Yeah. Hello.
Oh, okay. I never used this Discord before, so it's all new to me. I just wanted to say, great channel. I love this, your content you guys are bringing. It's really entertaining, and what you're saying is true, everything you're pointing out, it's, it's not being addressed in the mainstream media for sure, But do you guys remember the movie The 40-Year-Old Virgin?
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it.
Yeah, I really think society wants that kind of man in society. They want that blue-pilled. That's what they were setting men up to be. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of like staying a virgin and supporting these single mothers, with kids from different fathers, and they really need that for society. And until they take the black pill, if they don't have that kind of man in society, this society is going to fall apart. And I want to get your opinions on that. Man in society. It's really hard to hear.
You first.
Yeah, I don't think society actually needs as many men as we think, because what this labor crisis is going to lead to, it's going to lead to, like, this is not going to stay forever. What they're going to do is the United States can create a new visa program. They already have visa programs, H-1B visa, all these visas, where they can bring in immigrants to work these jobs. And men coming from the Caribbean or South America, they're willing to do it and be incel at the same time, because the relative wages are so much higher here. So that's a boon for them. So there's always going to be a replacement for all these needs. This isn't going to last because of COVID. The immigration has slowed down, and that's provable in the data. But also, what's going to happen is, how we have like 5 Starbuckses or these 5 burger shops per square mile. These franchises, we're gonna slim down. They're gonna give up finding labor. They're not gonna find enough of it, and some of them are gonna go automated. And what's that gonna? Some of them are already gone automated because they have the menu. What you don't like, or the app that they make you download now is automated because there's no more cashier. You already order for yourself. You already pick for yourself. So basically, and the robot that automatically makes a lot of food has been like in demand. It's only like 40,000 too. That's a pretty good deal considering how much you have to pay for fast food workers now. So that's the thing. This worker kind of advantage is not going to last for long. The employers are going to come back with a huge vengeance for this, and they're going to flood this place with immigrants. The third world's always reproducing faster than the first world, so they can. There's this huge labor pools, and globalization has opened the window to utilize this. So I think right now it seems like, we're giving it to the system, but that's gonna rear its ugly head. This Goliath is gonna come back, and it's gonna be, we're really gonna figure out how useless the average man is to society once 2030 hits or something like that. Because this is a lesson for the employers that, hey, we can't rely on people to come to work anymore, especially young men. So we need to import or automate. that's unfortunately what's gonna happen.
It's an excellent point. I didn't even think about that. Hiring immigrants, because there's what's going on right now, definitely to replace, the average male worker out there. And just to make another point, my age, I remember a time before dating apps. I grew up, way back, way before the internet, actually. And just for people to know, the younger guys, sexual inflation is real. I don't know what I would be if I was a young man today. I know I wouldn't be living the same life. You know what I'm saying? It'd be much harder for me to date than I was in my 20s. So, unfortunately, it's a real thing. I mean, you guys are hitting it right on the head. I know you're probably a lot younger than me, but I've seen the differences. I mean, women, back then it was just face to face. There was no internet. They didn't have so many options as they do today. So it was much easier for men at that time. We're talking in the 90s. But yeah, sexual inflation is very real today. I mean, I feel bad for young guys.
And the thing is, I think the mistake the manosphere makes the most is they assume that women have to pick a man out of that pool. No, women have a lower sex drive and they have a higher tolerance to be single and like to the common cat lady. They can feel much better being single than as a young man. As a young man, it's a rite of passage. Like as a woman, if you're a virgin, that's celebrated. If you're a young man as a virgin, that's So there's an assumption that women eventually have to settle down or pick a guy, and I think that's complete bullshit because. I think women can sit this one out. If they don't, that's the dating limbo Steve Hoka talks about. The women can afford mentally and physically, and like they're down. They can afford to sit this one out, and until like the right guy comes along, and women's standards only seem to go up from 18 to 30. Anyways, this wall, I think the wall was the biggest illusions MGTOWs have ever put on, because it's not with the current times. Maybe it was available in the past. I can't speak for the past. It wasn't around in the past. But for now, there's really not. A woman can sit out the dating market. If she doesn't find what she wants, she can do it for a lifetime. There's just like men have copes, they have copes too. And honestly, their copes are much better because they're still noticed by society.
Doggies.
Yeah.
Doggies. Zoloft. Wine.
Well, yeah, I mean, women have been brainwashed to always look for something better than they are. I mean, you hear the same story all the time. They do not want to settle down; they want to settle up. But I think society wants single women. They're just there. It's better for the elites, because they're the ones that are easier to control, and they're the largest consumer base. I mean, women spend far more than men. They don't save any.
They're also less likely to drop out of the labor market because there's no like this mass NEET movement for women. They especially now, like there's someone that posted our like there's this like badass chick kind of movement, like you go girl, you're your own boss, like climb the executive ladder, like do this, like do that, and like if you really want to have like a messed up autistic kid at 35 with some leftover guy like that you can choose. I mean, like women they're the ascendant gender right now, and men are for the most part the descendant gender. So I think that's what's going on now, is that women are more engaged in the labor market because there's more for them. I mean, just look what LinkedIn says. This is not us like projecting or saying something. This is the true facts. I mean, the true data, when you can look for the Social Security Administration on who's paying into it more. Young women are much better off in the labor market, and that's why they retain their positions. They're the ones. And that's why the more young men drop out, the harder it is for these young women, because what's going on now in the labor market is it's like a double whammy effect. It's a negative feedback cycle. As more of labor drops out, of the remaining labor has to work a lot harder, like at a restaurant or something. They have to cover like the bosses want to squeeze people. Now you have to work for 2 people or 3 people, especially with COVID. A lot of these places have figured out what's their minimal staffing level. How hard can they push people? Like Fritos Lay's, John Deere, all these places are having labor strikes over like poor conditions because they've been worked to the bone. So as more young men drop out, let the young women handle the labor market. Let them work for 3 people at a McDonald's. Let them do it. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, what eventually will happen is you will get young men working again because there'll be immigrants. There'll be immigrants from Haiti, which is destroyed. We're seeing these pileups on the border. So It's
But
obvious
they
what's
don't
going
know
on.
anything. You think they're smarter than the average NEET? You're mistaken,
You
man.
don't need a lot of. We have we have H-1B visas for the geniuses or whatever. We'll find them. We'll find them and take them. You don't need that many smart people to run this society. It's already.
What makes you think they want to come to America in the first place? I was talking to some dude from Pakistan. He goes, "It's not the same country, my friend. Not the same country.
Oh,
Very expensive now."
those people, it's the dollar. They'll come for the dollar, and they just because they detest this country doesn't stop. Yeah, they might hate this country, but they'll come here and work for 5 years, and that STEM major that worked here, that native guy that worked here for a long time and worked his ass off. He's not gonna get it because that guy from India or Pakistan is willing to take less money. He also, with these H-1B visas, if they quit that job, their visa is canceled unless they find another employer in 90 days. So they're much more loyal. They have to be more loyal to the employers. This is like what's going on now is in the short term, it's an advantage to the regular worker. In the long term, this is a big advantage to the big guys because they have justification to replace most male labor. They'll do a bunch of new visa programs. They'll pass them into Congress. Nobody will care about them. And we're gonna suffer even more for what's going on now as simple workers in 2030. They'll find a way, especially this remote work is a trap. It's a trap because if you can do the remote work and you can move from San Francisco to North Dakota and do it, why can't Patel do it in India for even less? So it opens up the door. Yeah, it opens up the door to so much more depravity and so much more worse situations. I do want to wrap up this stream, and I think you are the last guest, Mr. X.
Okay.
So yeah.
Hey, keep up the good work. I love the content and keep enjoying. I love these streams.
Yeah,
doing great work.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Thanks.
man. I appreciate it.
Have a good night, everyone. Thanks.
So Lamprey, do you have any lasting words you want to fill the stream on, or any parting?
Each is to his own. I like I said, I do sympathize with the average NEET. I get where you're coming from. But I do think the ball game has certainly changed. I wouldn't advise the average guy to be a NEET, given the circumstances, what is at hand in 2021, broaching into 2022, because the situation is not getting any better. And I do agree with you first that maybe it is best for a lot of guys to go their own way, drop out, get NEET, have their saucy fries, and enjoy their Netflix and video games. But I do see that they're slowly pulling the bread and circuses away from you and rationing those type
Especially
of things.
China, like what's going on in China with their video game limitation. And China's the most extreme in these policies. Always, they're the most because they have the most safest bet with their surveillance system. Nobody owning guns or nothing being politically viable compared.
But also they also love Xi Jinping because he cares about China.
But you're totally right about the copes. I'm just saying, just to conclude it, is that look what China, they're limiting what men they don't want. They have a lying flat movement because they have the 996 system over there where you work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, which is insane. That's a lot of young guys, especially, they can't find the gender imbalance, the increased standards of women now in China. A lot of them are saying screw it, we're gonna lie flat. There's a NEET movement over there too. And what is the government doing? As soon as that starts becoming like a viable threat, no more video games, we're gonna regulate that. No more entertainment, we're gonna regulate that. So, and I think what happens in China is gonna move itself here, just like with COVID, it moved itself here. And I think this system will try. If too many men drop out, it will do anything. Look what it does. Oh, now we don't have enough drivers, we'll send in the military. Who are the military? It's mostly incel young men. I mean, that's what they do.
Right.
That's what they do, is they take male labor from somewhere else, and they'll keep doing that. So I think the best way to protest this is if more men, they drop out and they slide out and they try to do the most minimum thing. That's the best way of combating the system. You're not wanted by almost anybody in the system and the society. The only thing you provide for is if you're going to go be a plumber, electrician, and keep this thing going. They want your labor. They want that's all. And so don't give it to them. That's what I'm just saying with this NEET thing.
My only concern with that is that you're playing into the devil's hands. When I mean devil, I mean they. And when I mean they, I mean the powers that being. So that's my only counter argument to that. I'm not saying you're wrong. There's plenty ways you can fucking skin that cat. I'm not saying you're right. I'm not saying I'm right. But I think for a young guy, you're gonna look back at yourself and wonder what the hell did you do with your life. and being in video games or whatever. I don't necessarily think that's a good way of occupying your time. Reading books, gaining knowledge, taking up a trade. You don't have to actually have to work, but as long as you know how to do shit on some type of level, I think that's important. And I know first you're not a NEET, neither am I. But we know NEETs. We speak to you guys. We speak your language. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of where I want to leave it off at.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, I always like having you on because you update the situations like on what you know about the real estate and everything, and all that is a pertinent topic to what's going on in the broader life for everybody. So yeah, and I enjoyed reading the articles you do. And I say,
yeah, please check out my articles. I wrote one about the doggy article. Maybe someday we can cut. Yeah, I wrote a dog pill article. I got a lot of views. You guys go to the American Sun. Check out my work on the American Sun. There's a lot of other great writers over there. So I really appreciate you reading it. That means a lot to me. I plan on releasing a part 2 to that article within the next couple months. Talk a little bit more about real estate, where we're going. I know a couple people in the chat were talking about homesteading and living off grid. Just know, again, you're buying time. The people that are running the show know you're trying to flee and running away from the system, and they'll definitely catch you living out in the prairies one way or another. I'm hoping for some type of correction. Hope is a cope, no doubt about it. But you're just gonna have to play with the hand that's dealt to you and right. Make the best of it. Whether it's NEET, whether that's taking up a trade, whether that's relocating. I know we talk a lot about the women problem. I'm super black-pilled when it comes to westernized women. I've covered that ad nauseum. That situation is not going to change unless there's a correction in the system itself. And when that correction does happen, if it does happen, trust me, thoughts and doggies are in for a rude awakening, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and your articles, you write very well, I gotta say. It's in the description. It's right. People are asking where to find this stuff. Yeah, American Sun, I have the latest article in there too, and your channel, MGTOW Chats. I would say I do enjoy your long, so much of YouTube is going to dog shit short-term content that's not worth anything. That's just very lazy and very low attention span.
Nothing on anymore.
Yeah.
I have nothing. All my subscribers are gone. There's I don't have any content to view anymore. BitChute's horrible.
Just say if you can, just do more of the the chats you did in the past. People tell me all the time, and I myself enjoy them a lot. As soon as one comes out, I'm like, oh shit, I have 2 hours. I can listen to something. So, and there seems to be less and less of that. It seems like there's kind of a death of that type of stuff. So, yeah, if you could
COVID's eating up a lot of the bandwidth. There's nothing else to talk about but COVID.
Yeah, it's annoying. But yeah, if you could do more, we're all eagerly awaiting for the next. And I want to thank you for coming on the stream, and maybe we can do it in the future. As every time things change, you always have very interesting spin on it. So, yeah, if things do change and whatever happens in the future in 2022. I hope to have you back on and for us to have a new discussion, a new look on things. Thank you, Lamprey.
Yeah, 100%. We'll definitely do it. Thanks again first.
All right. Of course. Thank you so much.